Good morning. Today we're going to continue discussing actually the different types of ecosystems, mainly because we hadn't really gotten into the marine types of ecosystems. So it will be a review for the terrestrial ecosystems that we talked about, but then we're also bringing in marine ecosystems to kind of finish up this section on the different biomes. Okay, so ecosystems. So before I continue, this is from a textbook, okay, online. You don't have access to this, so if I ever want you to kind of like read stuff from here, I'll just go ahead and do a screencast-o-matic. You can always pause the video so you can read what's on the page, but I'll kind of go over the important stuff with you. So important things that you're going to need to know are pay attention to the vocabulary term, okay? And then you can always, again, pause the video, read through it on your own if you're needing to get a little bit more information to answer the questions or the assignment that I'll be giving you. Okay, so you already know that an ecosystem is a whole bunch of different types of organisms living together. Okay, there's different types of ecosystems only because there's different types of biomes, so you have different types of organisms living in different types of areas, and then these types of organisms that thrive there are based on the different types of weather patterns that you have, so how far they are from the equator, the type of climate that they have, the temperature, so all that will determine the types of organisms that are able to thrive in a particular area. Okay, you know that in ecosystems you have biotic and abiotic factors. Okay, so biotic factors of an ecosystem include things that are living. You can categorize all the living or biotic factors into two other categories. So you have flora and then you have fauna. Flora is going to talk about the different types of plant life that are available in an ecosystem. And then the fauna refers to the different types of animals that are in a type of ecosystem. Okay, abiotic factors, remember abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the ecosystem. So rocks, minerals, water, nutrients, all those things that are not living, but they're still important for supporting life in the ecosystem. One more thing, sorry, remember we talked about food chains, food webs. So remember, all these organisms play a role with each other. So some organisms will feed off of other organisms, and that's where you have your different food chains, food webs that we talked about before. Okay, so this just shows you, this is a picture that shows you the different levels, okay, in an ecosystem. So you have, remember, the flora, so the different types of plant life that's there. Then you have the fauna, so the different types of animal life that's there. And then you have the different types of, or the different levels of the ecosystem. We talked about all that before. Okay. We're going to first be looking at aquatic ecosystems, since we haven't touched on that before. So aquatic ecosystems, okay, are those found in water, so bodies of water, streams, rivers, wetlands, and oceans, whereas terrestrial is land ecosystems, so prairies, woodlands, and deserts. Okay, your aquatic ecosystems, so aquatic ecosystems include communities of water animals like fish and amphibians, and water plants like algae and water lilies. There's two types of aquatic ecosystems. You have marine and then you have freshwater. Okay, marine ecosystems is the largest type of ecosystem on the planet. This is all the salt water that we have. Okay, so marine ecosystems cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface. They also contain 97% of our planet's water, but unfortunately we cannot drink that water. It's not good to use for crops because it has so much salt in it. So unfortunately we have all of this water, but we can't use it for ourselves or to grow crops. Okay, the high concentration of salt in the water makes it a saline solution. Okay. Marine ecosystems are divided into smaller categories. Again, you have really big organisms, okay, like your whales, but then you have your smallest organisms that fall on Earth, which is your plankton. These are all located in the marine ecosystem. Okay, marine ecosystems include oceans, estuaries, coral reefs, salt marshes, and several really unique ecosystems such as profundal or hypothermal vents. Okay, we're not really going to get into those, but we will talk about the estuaries, okay, oceans, and stuff like that. Okay, so estuaries are partially enclosed bodies of water on the coasts of oceans and larger seas. Okay. Estuaries have fresh water that flows into them. So this is kind of like the in between where water flows from inland to out into the ocean. Okay, so it's a mix of salt water and fresh water. So it's not as salty as marine water, but it's not as fresh. It doesn't have very little salt concentrations like your fresh water does. Salt marshes are the areas of land and water between the high and low tides of the ocean. So whenever high tide comes in, okay, these areas will be covered in that salt water. Once low tide, so the water recedes, okay, some of the water is left there, but you can still see some dry patches that are there. So again, you can always pause the video, read through whatever you would like to read through. Okay, so that's the two that we're going to cover for marine ecosystems. Now, freshwater ecosystems are ecosystems where the water is fresh, not salty, so there's no salt in the water. Many freshwater ecosystems eventually flow into marine ecosystems, okay, and this is where we get less than 1% of the Earth's water, or the Earth's water that we can drink, we can use to grow crops and stuff. Okay, there's three main types of freshwater ecosystems. You have lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers, and then you have your wetlands. So lakes and ponds are lentic ecosystems. This is where the water is not moving, it's still. Okay, lakes and ponds are usually small, but you do have some bigger lakes as well. Okay. Plant life, so depending on how deep the water is going to determine how much of a fauna they can hold, or the flora actually too as well, that they can withstand. The more light that gets into it, the more plants you're going to have. They can go through photosynthesis, right? So the deeper the water goes, the less likely you're going to have a bunch of plant life down there on the bottom, just because there's not enough sunlight to get to go through photosynthesis. Okay, streams and rivers, those are lotic ecosystems. That's where the water is moving. Okay, think about the rivers and streams, that water is constantly moving. That's lotic, whereas in lakes and ponds, the water is usually still. It may have a small little current, but it's not flowing like it is in rivers and streams. Okay. We already talked about the terrestrial ecosystems, so remember you have your forest ecosystems. I'm not going to go through those again, just because we've already talked about this, but again, feel free to pause the video. You can read through it on your own if you would like. Okay, so your forest ecosystems. You have your desert ecosystems, okay, grasslands, mountains. Okay. Here's a map that kind of shows some of the different ecosystems that we have. Remember, it's all based on the distance from the equator. The further north or south you get from the equator, so the further you get from the equator, the colder the temperature is going to be. Okay, the closer you get, the more type of tropical climates you're going to have, the tropical terrestrial biomes you're going to see. Okay, so these are different types of tropical forests that we can have. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Again, you can go back and read through this. Pause the video on any page that you'd like to see to look at the different vocabulary that you have there. But this is going to be your first video. Bye, guys.